Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
She doesn't get out of work till 6.
It is Wednesday, August 21st at 5:30, and I would like to call the Personnel and Finance Committee to order. In absence of Clerk Tirada today, Ellie will be taking the roll, please.
Committee Chair Nisrowski,
Present.
Councilmember Vice Chair Warner, Councilmember Lee,
Present.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan,
Present.
Councilmember White,
Present.
Citizen Member Angela Smith,
Present.
Citizen Member Ross Steele.
Present.
Thank you so much. And I also believe, Ellie, that you have some comments you'd like to make before we begin the meeting.
For audio quality, we will be muting everyone not speaking by default. If you would like to speak during the public portion, please submit your request in the chat. Directions to do so will be listed in the chat. We ask that you provide your full name and address, as those are required for all speakers at in-person council meetings. If you have any questions, please use the link provided in the Teams chat to submit them. Thank
you very much. So this evening, we'll be hearing the budget presentations from the Police Department and the Fire Department. I'd like to begin by offering a few words to the public who may not be informed about the budget process. This is the second of 11 meetings for the 2025 budget. The council's job is to pass the budget based on presentation, information received, and feedback from the residents. This means that the adopted budget may be different from the originally proposed budget. The council cannot increase the budget, fund programs, or create expense items for any city projects, but we can decrease the budget. If you visit the South Bend Common Council webpage, information and links for the 2025 budget are located here, as well as a link to submit questions for each budget meeting. Additional information can also be found on the city's Build the Budget website. Information about additional location, dates, and the upcoming budget meetings can be found here, as well as the budget survey that is open until September 13th. After the presentation today by each department, council may ask 2 questions. It will then open up to the public, and 2 questions from each council member, or from each person from the public, can be asked during the public portion of the meeting. If there are additional questions from members of the public or the council, please submit those questions to the clerks. They will direct those questions to our city controller and then put those responses on the website. I ask you to please keep your questions germane to the presentation and a decorum that is respectful to everyone. A maximum of 5 minutes is allotted for each questionnaire. And since we have 2 departments and we are limited for 2 hours, I do ask everyone to please keep their questions to 2. Okay? So we're going to begin this evening with Chief Ruskowski from the South Bend Police Department.
I'm assuming I'm right here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Scott Ruskowski, South Bend Police Department, Police Chief, 701 West Sample Street, South Bend. The clicker. So this is just a comprehensive overview. With me I have Assistant Chief Dan Skibbins and Chief Tim Lancaster and Ken Glowacki, our financial officer. So I'm just going to do a brief overview. You've already seen these. Hopefully you've already seen these. They're very similar. Some are same as last year, but I did want to highlight just a couple new ones that were not on there last year or new and improved. Bolo Wrap, have you seen, that's one of our new technologies that we have to aid us in apprehensions. Pepper Ball as well. We have new taser systems. Our resource router comes in conjunction with ShotSpotter. It actually does our analytics through our evidence-based police reporting in order for us to deploy our officers, directed patrol deployments or missions, as you may have heard of them before. We have an addition to our TrueNarc, which is a narcotics, illegal narcotics reading system. It's an M908 mass spectrometer. That's a new item that we have. We're actually working with the prosecutors and the judicial system to hopefully get that recognized, so there won't be such a delay with the Indiana State Police to get our narcotics tested, which could take 6 months, a year and a half. Our transparency hub is new and improved. It's just over a month old, and we'll be rolling out our new website here before long, at least before the end of the year, but probably within the next month or two. In enforcement strategy, we have designated traffic cars. I know that's been a point of contention with many in the community, including the council. We have traffic cars assigned to every shift, and of course, every officer can and should be doing traffic stops as well during their routine patrols. We've added, fully implemented, our community resource officers, CROs, as we call them. They've been quite instrumental, especially in nuisance enforcement. I know there's, at least 3 council members right now, 4 council members right now that are fully aware and have utilized our community resource officers. We all, down in community outreach, notably, we have besides our staff meetings, we have our quarterly public safety updates. Those are done with the mayor. That's also immediately on our transparency hub. That's 1 month delay when all the information is fully implemented onto that transparency hub. Citizens Police Academy is ×2 this year now. We have a spring and a fall class due to popular demand. We have one going on as we speak. For the intelligence component, I think you have already been through, I think all of you have been through the Real-Time Crime Center. We now have, since the last time that we met, we have 6 full-time employees working in an analyst capacity at our police department. 6 additional since the last time we met. Again, you see missions in parentheses up there under the intelligence. That's a directed patrol or deployment based on our information that we have from evidence reporting in police reports, meaning we have evidence, photographs, witness statements, real people reporting crimes against them. That's how we deploy our resources. Training, the state law went into effect. We have to do a minimum of 24 hours. We do that, and sometimes up to double that amount. Most of our officers get double that amount. Simulator-based training, it's the version that we call. I know some of you have been through that before with our police academy. We'll be doing that with our police academy and our officers. Those are all scenario-based from situations that we've been involved in South Bend and elsewhere, and come up with different scenarios that, based on the officer's action or reaction, we can change the outcome of that scenario. So we have a variety of ways that we can do that. And then for recruiting, we've been to the college and military visits, job fairs. We obviously have a very attractive contract and incentive package, but most notably, I think our biggest hit has been the Prospect Days, which is run similar to the NFL Combine. We just do most of the stuff literally in 1 day, 2 days tops when you count the written test. Notably, we have our next Prospect Day Saturday. I think we're up to 65. I believe was our last count of people who at least said that they were going to attend that. So with that, that's just a brief overview of our comprehensive plan, and I turn it over to Pam for the financials. I'll be right here.
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, yeah.
You just skip the slide.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. You do good work. Ken Glowacki, 701 West Sample. I'm the Director of Finance for Public Safety. I want to talk now about financials. The first screen shows the summary that Finance and Admin has prepared for the police budget. You see that our 2025 budget is $55.1 million. Kyle's highlighted a couple key line items on this page. I want to walk through them just a little bit here, and then I'll get into more details. One of the first things I want to point out is if you look at the 2022 actuals, You'll notice on the second line, there are no fringe benefits. In 2022, the city decided to transfer salaries from the general fund to the American Relief Fund, and in doing that, combined the benefits up on the top line with salaries. So that's why there's no amount for 2022. And then you'll notice that going from 22 to 23, salaries and benefits in 22 were 28.6 million, jumping up, if you combine salaries and benefits in 2002, or 2023, excuse me, the combined is closer to $33 million. That's a pretty significant jump. Well, in 2023, and I'm only going to have a few comments on 23, that's obviously the history, but I thought I'd address a few outliers here before we move on. 2023 was the first year of the new police contract. Policemen received an 8% raise, which was significant. They also went from time and a half to double time. So those two impacts, along with an increase in longevity, increased salary and benefits significantly in the following years. Okay. One of the other items that I want to point out here is go to the very bottom line. You see police pension for 2025 is going to be $5,999,000. This pension is typically referred to as the old pension plan. This came about in the 70s. Fire department, police department, and fire were both moved to a statewide plan. So this plan is covering, I don't think there's any current policemen in this plan. These are all retired firemen, policemen. I'm going to pay for that later. And it's completely reimbursed by the state. Okay, so that money is not funded by the general fund. Thank you, Chief. This next page, and again, is a bit of what I would call an accounting slide. It's rather cumbersome, but what I want to point out here is the police budget is funded by a number of funds. If you look at the first two columns, Fund 101 and 249, I've highlighted in blue. Those are the dollars that if you were to ask Chief Ruskowski of his operating budget, that's what he would generally respond to as the police operating budget. The next column, Fund 701, is the pension plan that I just discussed, reimbursed by the state, and I won't be talking about that any further. The funds in the green columns are typically referred to as non-reverting funds. The biggest one is Fund 220, which is also known as the Continuing Education Fund. This fund is supported by federal and state grants, along with several fines and fees that the department receives. For example, we receive a fee every time a citizen requests an accident report. Those monies go into this account. And the biggest expenses out of this fund, we use it for training and education. You see that's budgeted for $175,000 next year, along with travel a little further down of $55,000. Those are the costs for training our police force. The other item I'll talk about is supplies, which is $180,000. Right now, that's frankly a very rough guess. We are in the process right now of filing for 2025 federal and state grants. That have not actually been filed yet, but what's on the table is we're looking at approximately $497,000 of grants that we will receive. We'll actually receive the official word on those in October. So to some extent, I put in a little bit of a guess as to what I I think the expenses will before. We know what items we've requested, but there can be some issues, like something that I think is gonna be a supply, may turn out to be a leased item and may be, have to come out of a different account. So right now, I don't try to super guess where those expenses will be. You'll see what'll happen is in the first quarter, when I know exactly what those are, I will request an additional appropriation that's covered by these revenues. And when I know what those expenses are, I'll then turn in an appropriation, which will be at the first quarter of 2025 council approvals, okay? The final pink column is Fund 406, which is, I believe, the edit fund. Those dollars in there are for debt service and principal. Those dollars go back, was set up in this account. At one point in time, the controller decided to use this account to fund some of our debt service. And it's been out there for some time. The next slide, I'm now going to focus on what I would call, police operations. And that basically is the first two columns you saw on the earlier slide, which is the general fund and the lawyer. And what I wanted to show on this slide is, if you look at the chart, you will see that salary and benefits represent 79% of our budget. It is what drives all the other expenses, okay? Capital is our next biggest item at 11%, and it's basically the cost of purchasing of police vehicles. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. If you go to the next slide, Chief. So now I still have those same expenses, but now I want to talk a little bit about, explain some of the details. So going down to the fourth line, you see that our total salary and benefits for 2025 will be $38,500,000. That's the cost of 257 officers. It includes 4.25% raise, which is already in the contract. It's the third year of our existing contract. It includes an increase in the 25 plus years longevity base of $1,000, which will increase the longevity to $8,500 for officers with service greater than 25 years. The other key point to that is that longevity plus the salary for a first-class patrolman is what's defined as the certified salary for police pensions. And of that total, the city pays 20% into IMPRES every year for every officer. And looking down to the fourth bullet point, you see that those two things combined increase our pension costs $1,820 per officer to a total of $17,388. Okay. The other item driving our costs is our health insurance increased $1,250 per person. So that's officers and civilians, to a total of $15,250. That along with the police pension is what's driving up our fringe benefit costs up an increase of $800,000. If you look at the fringe benefit total cost of $10 million, the two largest items are health insurance at $5 million and the perf union cost of almost $4.5 million. So those two items account for a big chunk of that $10 million. The one other item that I want to point out on this slide is, you notice I have two lines for salaries. The first line is the salaries that are paid out of the general fund, and you'll notice that that is going down compared to the 2024 budget. That's because we've had an increase in expected revenues for the Lloyd. The Lloyd's purpose is to pay for police and fire salaries. That increased $1,889,000, so it reduces the amount of salaries that need to be paid by the general fund. Moving down a little bit, you see that our services costs are $4,667,000, an increase of $117,000. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And I said it earlier, our capital costs, which is the last item on this list, is $3,202,000, which is next to salary, our single biggest expense. And that is for the cost of purchasing 34 new vehicles, along with capital to redo the fuel site to get up to EPA standards. Thank you. I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about overtime, which is included in our salary costs above. You see that for 2023, our overtime costs were $3.1 million. The adopted budget for 2024 was $2.8 million. I'm forecasting right now that our overtime will be closer to $2,255,000, and we've budgeted overtime to be $2.6 million next year. And what all that means, well, if you remember where we started, I explained that 2023 was an unusual year. We went from time and a half to double time. We were also very short-staffed, so our overtime increased up to $3.1 million. Along with an increase in officers and more focus on overtime, I expect that our 2024 overtime costs will be closer to $2,255,000. I have an increase for next year, essentially based on a salary increase that will affect our overtime rates. Okay. On the next slide, I wanted to talk a bit about supplies. I'll talk first, I've highlighted two items here, our general operating supplies and gasoline costs. Gasoline costs for the department I'm estimating to be $800,000 next year, which is down from this year, largely due to a decrease in price. That gasoline cost is based on the use of around 266,000 gallons that the department uses. We're the largest user of gasoline in the city. And Chief, do you want to speak to the operating supply?
No, well, yeah, there may be, because I know it's very notable on here, which is why I had Ken highlight this. So the 200,000 of that is going to be for a sidearm transition. We're going to new and improve our inventory. I won't get too much into tactics and safety features when it comes to our officers' operations. However, these will improve safety mechanisms on the firearms themselves, and also come equipped with some different lighting features, different holsters, and things of that nature. So this is a usual transition point after our cycle, but these are going to have a little bit more safety and protective measures in place than what we currently have.
And I get the other comment I would make is you see that after those two items, which make up 1.6 million of our $1.7 million budget, everything else is kind of pales in comparison, and it's basically supplies needed for the office, it's supplies for drug tests, all the things that officers need, from, batteries for flashlights to, thumb drives to submit evidence from the computer to the DA's office. But that's a quick oversight of our supplies budget. The next slide is our professional services. And I've highlighted some of our larger items, although I really neglected to highlight down at the bottom our debt service principal and interest. And so included in our services budget is the cost of leasing for the 34 vehicles that we buy every year. So that cost is the prior 4 years of leases we've built up. Going back to the top of the list, you see that professional services, the top line is $355,000. The single biggest item in there is we have a agreement with the county to pay for 3 officers in the special victims unit. And depending on how many officers they have throughout the year, that expense is approximately $250,000 to $270,000. Other professional services, and there's things like vet services for our canine squad, some of the mental health services for appointments for police officers. Legal expense is basically an estimate I get from our legal department from our open cases and their discussions with outside counsel. If you take a look at the last 2 items in yellow, see repairs and maintenance for auto equipment and repairs and maintenance for radio equipment. Those are the cost of maintaining our fleet of vehicles, along with the cost of, and I'm going to talk about the cost of purchasing 34 cars in a second, but when we receive those cars, we have to install additional equipment in those cars. The cost of the equipment is included in the lease costs, but the installation costs are done by our service garage and are charged back to us, and that's included in the $700,000 maintenance and the $200,000 for radio equipment. The next slide is our capital plan, and I included 2024 just as reference, but 2025, you see that the first item on the list is $200,000, which is an estimate of what we will need to repair and fix a bomb bunker that we have, which is used by our bomb squad. The facility is in need of repair, and that's our original estimate of what it's going to take to do that. The next item is an estimate to purchase 2 undercover cars. And then you'll see that the biggest item on the list is motor equipment. Plan to buy 34 police cars. Our estimate is $74,000 each. And that breaks down into about $40,000 for the vehicle and $30,000 to $34,000 for all the equipment that goes in, from cage to electronics, the equipment that's needed to download signals from body cameras and unupload it to storage. That cost is, I've been doing this for police now for 11 years. I remember first couple of years, that cost was $29,000 and then another $5,000 for electronics that go into it. And, you know, along with just the cost of electronics, the additional request of, you know, video cameras, shot spotter, computers in the car, uploading all that information has increased those costs significantly over time. Also talk a little bit about, we buy 34 cars a year. We've been doing that now for the last several years, and what that means is we turn over the fleet of vehicles about every 8 years. So maintaining this schedule means there are vehicles out on the street that are 8 to 10 years old. We get about 100 to 120,000 miles per vehicle before we put it out for auction. So the total of the capital request for this year is $3,204,000. So that's all I have for my prepared presentation.
Okay.
We can open for questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation and providing us with slides as well. I will come to our council members first. Is there any questions from, I should say the committee first. Is there any questions from the committee? Councilmember Tomas Morgan?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Chief, we're adding 6 new analysts, so that brings us to a total of how many?
There's different factions of analysts, but I think it's 8 total right now.
8, we're adding 2, we'll have 10.
Yeah, so we'll have 10 total. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have 10 total.
In
2025, by the end of 2025, we'll have 10 total. We have
Okay.
8 now.
Okay. We have 8 now? No.
Yes.
Okay. So you said we're adding 6.
Since the last time, yeah, my first page, yeah, since the last council, last year at this time, we've added 6 full-time analysts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Pastor Lee?
Thanks for your presentation. And really don't have any other any major questions. When we lost our armadillo a few years ago, is that ever going to be replaced, or what happens? I mean,
Well,
I know that it set on fire and.
Yeah, kind of. That was a donated vehicle. So
Okay.
the vehicle itself was donated. Our garage did a bulk of the mechanics work on it. We did have some outside assistance that didn't charge us anything. So the Floyd's actually did all the body work and painting and decals and stuff on that. And then some of the equipment, nothing came out of our pocket. Everything was grant related, which, by the way, I'm glad you kind of jarred my memory, because a lot of that stuff, when I talk about the sidearm transition, a lot of the equipment is going to be paid for and or reimbursed by grants. But to get back to your question, so I know you've all seen our focus deterrence vehicles. Some of them, many of them, may or may not be equipped with 360 camera capabilities in them. So we'll have essentially, in theory, a bunch of little armadillos running around. But yeah, we miss it as well.
Because that was a big deterrent, and with the amount of cars that we have, I kind of followed how we got 34 at 74,000, and then the chart says 2.5, 2025, 2028. So every year is $2.5 million.
Yeah, and we'll have a gap year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. We had that gap year, that 1 year that
Yeah, that's
backlogged us.
projections for, that price could change because of inflation and things like that, but that's the projection right now for our 5-year plan.
And I think to your point, that yes, the cost of everything has gone up on top of it, but as Ken noted, our upfitting has been probably the most obvious to me anyway. I remember when it was, a couple $100 to outfit a car, with the transport module in there. I know Ken referred to it as something different, but, just for the body cameras and the in-car cameras, the cell uploading, the rockets that are required to go in there, it's like a mini Wi-Fi system, that's in the cars. Those are all requirements and the additional apps with, Fuses, Flock, as he said, ShotSpotter, our missions, all those other things are all combined in there, and that upfitting has been, they just don't make them like they used to, where they come like pre-assembled and you can just plug in and go to work. It's not like that anymore.
That's my two questions, but I got another one, but.
Angela?
Thanks, this is very insightful information. You talk about we cycle through 34 new vehicles a year and then we send them to auction. How is that, what we recoup from that incorporated into the budget or captured? The vehicles that go to auction, how is that incorporated or recouped in the budget? Where is that reflected, the money to get to that?
Well, first off, the amount we recoup from the auction is pretty small.
Okay.
Sometimes it's, less than $2,000 a car.
Depends on the year and how many miles, yeah, 2,000 to 5,000, 6,000 a vehicle.
But when we do get that money, it gets deposited into the general fund.
And then my other question for Chief Ruskowski, you had mentioned out of the, that $800,000 under supplies and operating, you mentioned $200,000 that was for sidearm transition. What's the other approximately 150 to 200?
Yeah, that's what Ken was talking about when he mentioned the bomb bunker, bomb suit. So there's also federal involvement with that, but there are some things the federal grant monies will not pay for, that we have to pay for in order to ensure that explosive items are stored properly, even things from, for example, like with the fire department, they may have some items that could be explosive. We would store them as well. It is very, very antiquated and quite frankly dangerous, and it's probably a couple years overdue for a remake. But we will get some reimbursement out of there. It's not the construction part, we cannot. Most of the safety mechanisms they can help pay for, they will.
Thank you.
Yep, Russ?
Thank you. Chief, you referenced the Special Victims Unit. Is that currently the only Metro unit operating?
Yes.
And are you happy with that arrangement? Would you like to see that go back somewhat to the way it was with more, or are you happy with the way it is?
The Family Violence Unit at the Casey Center, no, they're as we expected. Now, we've taken in-house all domestic violence cases, but they're still handling, obviously, the child and the aggravated rape and assault cases. They're handling all those. They have a lot more expertise in that. Again, not downplaying, but we have what they have there. They don't have what we have here, meaning when we do domestic violence cases, we got an entire detective bureau and patrol officers and everybody else that are readily available that they didn't have that luxury before. So I think it was a good split. We still are paying for some of the positions over there that they are filling through the prosecutor's office, but we still have two of our officers physically assigned there as well.
Then one other question. I compliment you on being at full strength. I know that was a struggle. And I will tell you from a citizen point of view that I have noticed the increased presence and the increased traffic enforcement. I welcome that. If budget were not, a prime concern, what would you say would be your optimum number of officers?
I'd say 260. I think we get 260. Of course, more depending on what the community wanted, to have some special things so we can go like specifically to a hypothetical nuisance property that we could put 100% resources to that property and do each one on every single side of town. So you're talking maybe 270, 75, probably. But we're down, I think we're 249 249 right now. So we have 4 at the academy. That's why we're doing a prospect day, and we may have a couple laterals, sighting us, so.
Thank you.
Ms. Ofield, good.
I would like to know, how do you go about distributing the new police cars when they come in? What,
I think generally the way we do it is, so we look at the age, like say this, with officers that currently have a vehicle, look at the age of the vehicle and miles, and then kind of from there it goes by seniority. So the most senior officers, they go first, and then you kind of go down the list. Like you said, you look at mileage. So like right now, for instance, we're issuing out vehicles we're removing vehicles that were like 2015s. So those vehicles are, like 9 years old. So we first look at whoever has a 2015 in the fleet, and then we look at which one has the highest mileage and start there and kind of go down the list, to who gets a new vehicle. So the officers have the oldest vehicles and the highest mileage vehicles are the first ones to get new vehicles. That way it cycles through, so we're constantly basically upgrading. So if an officer right now gets a new vehicle, they're probably looking at having that vehicle for about 8 years.
so, I guess, okay, I also would like to know, when you go through your cycle like that, so how many cars, I guess I'm trying to say, you just do it by seniority, so you don't say like, we're gonna put 4 new ones on the west side, the east side, north side, they're just done strictly by seniority, right?
Well, first by age of vehicle and year is first.
Okay.
So let's say, you have 5 vehicles that are all 2015s, and they all have the exact same mileage, right? Then the next step would be to look at the amount of experience for each officer. So all things equal with mileage and year of the car, that's when you would go to by seniority. But first it starts with the year of the vehicle and then mileage. So the first vehicle taken out of the fleet would be the oldest, which like so this year were the 2015s, so the oldest the 2015s were looked at, and we took the very highest mileage 2015. And then, like I said, but all factors are the same, then we use seniority to determine how the order would go. Usually, you don't really have to use seniority because you can generally go by the year of the vehicle and mileage.
So are all the officers driving pretty much safe cars?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, especially now, we were, like 3 years ago, our fleet was starting to get older, because we had a lot of 2012s, and they were the older Chevys and front-wheel drive and things like that. But for the last 3 years, luckily we were able to get the new Dodge vehicles, the SUVs, and now that we've got all the new Dodges, we're actually starting to really turn over our fleet. And I would say by next year, the majority of our fleet will be newer vehicles, 2017 or newer. Because this year we got rid of we decommissioned all our 2015s.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we said all the 2012 Chevys were just sent to auction. So we no longer have any 2012 cars, and the 2015s are no longer issued permanently to an officer.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember.
Yes, thank you, Chief, and others for the presentation. I noticed that the police department has done an amazing job with outreach and engagement, community. What impact do you think that's had on not only the community, but the officers as well?
I can tell you firsthand with the officers, it's not just face painting, it's actually, cooking on a grill. And those things are, I can't even put a value on that. Just knowing how, every one of them have been there as well. And that, to us, that's huge. We've been around a long time as well, and we don't often get the opportunity to deal with people in a non-crisis situation. And luckily, we have those now where we're able to do those, and it makes it a heck of a lot easier when there is a crisis situation.
Yeah, and I've heard nothing but positive feedback from individuals within the community and the kids themselves. So, thank you for that, because I think that has had a major impact in regards to how our community has really engaged with the police department, but also I think it's gonna help as we move forward. Okay. And my second question, if you had to identify 2 goals or objectives that you would like to, fulfill for the upcoming budget year, you know, what would they be?
Well, if you pass the budget, you've already
Oh,
fulfilled.
we're not gonna pass that now, okay? I'm teasing.
That would be, well, obviously, you already know my sentiments when it comes to crime, part 1, crime, whatever, you know, when that trigger. Number 1 goal would be 0. I'd like to have 0 in every single category. But if we can't get in every category, what about the aggravated assaults? What about people that are shot? If we can, the closest to 0 that we can get, preferably having 0, that's my only goal.
Okay.
We don't need any more in our community hurt. We don't need our officers hurt.
That's right.
That's my top 2.
Okay, thank you.
I think you had another question. We're still within the hour for this presentation, if you want to ask that additional question.
I know that we pay $64,000 or $74,000 for our vehicles, and then we send them off to auction when they're ready to be decommissioned. But we always need those focus deterrent vehicles in areas. Going from $74,000 to only getting about $2,000, would some of those be viable to keep in the community so that we could equip them with what they need as far as the camera equipment or whatnot, 360 cameras, and instead of just sending them off to the auction, we could actually recycle them and make them vehicles, because we get so many people, things are going on, and they would love to be able to have that in their neighborhoods. Is that possible?
Absolutely, that's exactly what we're doing. So some of the older ones that just aren't like feasible anymore to have those, for whatever reason. I mean, the 2012s obviously, and most of the 2015s, but we have 16s and 17s that have already been, or in the process of, being outfitted for just that. Again, I don't wanna go into a lot of details, but not all of them are marked police cars either. Some of them may just look like a regular car that we would have these, the capacity or opportunities to do those with as well. We also have hybrid vehicles that we did not get rid of, that we've repurposed, and are using for other things at the police department. So, yeah, absolutely, we're already, I don't know, we wouldn't call it upfitting, but it's refitting those vehicles to do exactly what you said. We've been doing that.
Can I have one more question? So, okay, I have one more question, maybe just one more, okay? So I also would like to know now, so I'll be hearing on the news, so is the police department fully staffed now?
We're 249 right now.
249, and your goal is?
Well, we're budgeted, but I'd love to be right. If we can stay between 250, 255, we can do a lot more things that we were not able to do for many, many years.
Okay.
And you've all seen the fruits of that labor, so we'd like to continue that and even expand further. When I do get a text or a call from a council member that there's an issue in their district that one of your people have contacted you on, we can immediately get to it, not have to wait 3 or 4 days or have an order of whose call came in first. That's what I'd really like to see get out there. We've been able to move towards that rather quickly. I'm very impressed with. I know some people aren't, but it's way better than what it was, I can assure you.
So are you heading in that direction right now?
Yes.
Okay, and then I would like to know, I would like to say to you all that, I'm very pleased with the new service that we have with the new, staffing that you have, because I like to see that 3 and 4 at a scene instead of 1 or 2, because I think it protects the individual, plus also the policeman too. So, okay, so that's about, y'all doing a good job. Okay,
Thank you.
I'm done.
Yeah, so I just have a quick question. We talked about you're at 249, you're budgeting for 257, and you touched on the resource officers, which, I'm a big fan of in the community. And you have your special focus unit?
Strategic focus unit.
Yes, strategic focus unit. Are you looking to expand resources to?
Yeah, so the Crows are a little bit newer. SFU is not. It goes back several different iterations of what that was. It was originally called Nest, and then Street Crimes, and then I forgot what it was after that, and now Strategic Focus Unit, but with legitimate reason. But they do two things, obviously the Group Violence Initiative and intervention first and foremost, but simultaneously dealing with illegal narcotics and drug houses and things like that, who also work with SIU, the Strategic Intelligence Unit, who work with the Crows. So they're all, you'd have to see it to believe it. I mean, we obviously live it every day. So, I mean, it's really close to not a well-oiled machine, but a pretty well lubricated machine as it is right now. The way the information is being shared and in the expedited fashion that it's shared, where that was not happening before. Everything was siloed, everyone kept their own thing, but now being shared in real time through the Real-Time Crime Center, facilitated by Bree and our other analyst, which is really weird because you think cops, you need to handle all that, and that's really not the case. We never thought it was before, where you have non-sworn police officers or non-sworn personnel dealing with police officers and working like a charm. I mean, it really has. So that is a huge part of that, because it's not just one. I know they each have their individual identities as in that group name, but it's all one thing.
And I don't want to disrespect any of the officers, but those resource officers are amazing. They've engaged with people in the community. They've been to apartment complexes, neighborhood meetings, and that direct correlation between them and your other special units is really, I believe it's really working. So I was just curious, because we talked about the resource officers last year, and you were just fielding them out, and we talked about, well, I talked about north, south, east, west to be able to cover the city, and I believe there's only currently 3, Officer Bourne, Officer Medor, and Officer Cole. So you're just gonna have 3.
Yep, there's 3, but again, they all work together with the SFU. I mean, to give an example, you all know me and I know you, but before you probably didn't know Sergeant Bourne, or maybe a little bit, and the same thing with Cole, the same thing with Medor, but now you do, and a whole bunch of other people, and that's the whole premise, that's the whole idea that we have, is any cop out there you all should know. And going down the street, why we have, to Ms. Karen's point, when we have the cookouts or cops and goblins or anything back to school related, at school, out of school, it doesn't matter. People get to know police and police get to know people, and that's only good things can happen from that.
Okay.
That's humanity. Hopefully we can get back to that someday.
Amen. Well, thank you. I am gonna go ahead and hold the public meeting. Is there anyone from the public here that would like to ask any questions? Thank you, Chief. Okay, I don't have my
Hello?
computer. If you could.
Ms. Cusum?
Yes, can you hear me?
Barely,
Hello?
hold on a second. Try it now, Sue.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening.
Always interested in the police budget, as you know. I want to say that the Real-Time Crime Center is just amazing. I hope that it continues to expand. I really appreciate that now there's going to be 2 citizen police academies. I found that personally very enlightening and very informative, and have a newfound respect. So those are great things, and I'm glad they've expanded. I did want to say we all pay state and federal taxes. I'd like to see the state and feds invited in to help with cleaning up maybe drug houses and things like that. I know that officers live here personally with their families. I think maybe having state and federal officers come in to assist would be good, so it would keep our officers a little safer. So I'd like to see something like that. 2 things that I've emailed before, a cost of a shooting I sent you a guideline on how that could be calculated. I'd really like to see the cost of a shooting. I think these budgets don't reflect how much it really costs, the crime is really costing us. So I'd like you to look at that and fill in that kind of guideline for a cost of shooting. And also, I sent GVI metrics. I didn't hear anything back from you guys on the GVI metrics. These are things that are, it's used by both Baltimore and Philadelphia. Um, a lot of times, I've stopped over to the O'Brien Center, the GVI office is empty. I ask the people at the desk, no, he rarely comes in. Like, what is he doing? So I think it's important if we're going to spend money on GVI to have the metrics answered. Um, and there's already guidelines on how to do that. So I'd like to see that accountability, and I'd like to see the accountability on the cost of a shooting. I know that when I talked to the county commissioners, they were investigating having a forensic morgue, or a forensic pathologist or coroner, and looking into that expense. I think that would be a huge help too. So basically, I guess my two questions are, what about the GVI metrics and what about the cost of a shooting? Keep up the good work. I think you're doing awesome. And yeah, I think it really shows. So thank you so much.
And thank you so much for your questions and for participating. Chief, do you want to answer that, or do you want to just answer that with the questions that'll be coming?
No, I can, and I know Sue did send that, and I did actually read that, the cost of a shooting, but the GVI metrics, I'm not really sure, and then Sue, I can get a hold of you offline, or I can do whatever you're looking for from that, but the GVI metrics is kind of confusing. We keep our internal metrics, actually very, very meticulous, so if you're thinking of a different portion of the GVI strategy, that may be something else, but if you could clarify, maybe if you could send an email clarifying what exactly GVI metrics. I don't like to use Philadelphia or Boston, and several other places for that. Those are, to me, they're bad examples, the horrible examples. And I think this is one thing that our community, especially concerning GVI, our community needs to take the lead on, which we have. We have been the trendsetters for others in the nations who have adapted their strategies based on what we've done. And that's the way it should be. Our community needs to have the input, which is what we've done, is how we do things, not how Boston or Philadelphia or whoever else does it, because I'm on the outside looking in, but it is not working there.
Well, thank you, Chief.
So actually, their metrics are that things are way down, and it also is a cost justification. It tells how much we're getting for our money. So the GVI metrics, perhaps since you haven't seen them, it might make more sense if you saw how they're tracking that it's worth the money. So we can get together offline. That's fine.
Chief, can you talk about the reduction that we've had?
I would, but right now we need to move on
Okay, sorry.
to fire, because we've got 1 hour with police and I've got an hour scheduled with fire. So I'm sorry, Councilman, but I'm sure if you emailed him, he'd be happy to share that with all the council members. So I'd like to thank you, Chief, for your presentations, for everybody being here from South. So I'm going to close the public meeting on the South Police Department. Any statements from council members before we move on? We're gonna move on. So next up, we have the South Bend Fire Department and Chief Carl Buchanan. And I see you have brought a lot of support with you from our fire department.
That's how the fire department grows. We are a team, all for one and one for all. Carl Buchanan, Fire Chief, 1222 South Michigan Street, South Bend, Indiana. It's my pleasure and privilege to be here. Thank you all, council members, for being here, as well as everyone else. I have with me my Assistant Chief, Brandon Rourke, my Assistant Chief Derek Urquhart, my Assistant Chief Todd Sporkin, my Assistant Chief Mike Damiano, and my Assistant Chief Andy Meyer, each one providing a distinctive purpose within our department. South Bend Fire Department does not have any civilians other than our EMS billing associates and our 2 administrative assistants in the office. Everyone else is out on the streets. I'd first like to bring up, if I can, let you go back. There you go. Thank you. I'd first like to talk about, start off with the fire department fully staffed would have 256 firefighters, each working 24-hour shifts, averaging 56 hours per week and 2,920 hours per year. That is what we would have. Just to compare, anyone that was in a full-time regular job would only be working 2,080 hours per year. We need a minimum of 69 firefighters per day to staff our 11 fire stations. Ideally, 81 firefighters would be necessary to cover vacations, comp time, FMLA, PFMLA, sick time, maternity leave, military leave, etc. And we are all experiencing that at this time. We have 11 engines, 4 aerial trucks, 1 heavy-duty rescue truck, and 7 ambulances. Let me clarify, the South Bend Fire Department is an EMS-based fire department. We are not just a fire department. So we can't be compared to some cities who only offer fire services to their residents. And we take great pride in making sure that our personnel is adequately trained, as well as has the necessary protective equipment in order to do their job satisfactorily and safely. Safely being the primary word. We have a training center where we do a 23-week regional training academy. Let me also talk about our training academy. The state does not provide a training academy for firefighters in the state of Indiana. Some states do, Indiana do not. So every time through attrition, we get below our minimum staffing and minimum personnel numbers, we have to operate a recruit academy. And that recruit academy is going to last between 21 and 23 weeks before we can adequately and effectively put someone out on the streets to take care of our citizens. So if you put that on a calendar, you are noting that that's roughly close to 6 to 8 months that we are training these individuals before they can get out there. So it's hard for us to keep up. If we were to have a training academy and we are trying to recruit 15 because we're 15 short, by the time those 15 finish the academy, we're probably down 8 at least minimum. And we can't continue to keep putting on recruit academies because it costs the city and the taxpayers a lot of money. So we are at that point to where it's hard to keep up with the decrease in our numbers, but that's our ultimate goal, is to reach our maximum capacity of firefighters so that we can effectively, efficiently, and safely mitigate incidents of all hazards for anyone or anybody that resides or passes through the city of South Bend. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a non-bargaining staff of 7, 4 of which are your process ambulance billing associates, 2 are administrative assistants, 1 is a maintenance fleet liaison. That individual basically is the in-between person for making sure our rigs stay on the streets and have communication with the maintenance repair shop in order to be able to get them in, and so that they can get repaired, at a faster pace than just sitting in the shops and waiting to be repaired. So this individual is not a sworn firefighter. This is a non-bargaining individual with a lot of heavy equipment expertise, and he makes sure that our equipment on those particular apparatuses stays good working condition, and making sure they have everything they need when they arrive on the scene. If you notice on the last bullet point, it talks about dispatch runs. Well, the numbers that you're seeing in front of you are just from 2023. I can tell you that 2024 numbers heavily exceed those, and 2025, based on 2022 and 2023, will indicate that those numbers are even going to double what these signify here. I can't give an exact reasoning of why the numbers are increasing, but I can tell you that we are getting more emergency medical calls in the last several years. I can't give you the exact indication of why that is, but I am telling you that when they call, we come, so it doesn't matter. So that number is going to increase, which again, if anyone does the numbers, will stipulate that we need more people out there than less to handle the calls of our citizens. We do have an all hazards response, which is confined space, hazmat, water rescue, technical rescues. If you stay in tune to some of the media reports, as we can all probably note, that sometimes reporting from a media perspective is not always in its entirety of what's going on, but you will probably remember some of the calls in regards to either semis turning over, semis on the toll road, getting into some type of motor vehicle accident, and the chemicals of whatever they're carrying is spilling into our roadways as well as our waterways. And so we have to respond to that. And when we do, we need individuals that are qualified and certified and trained in that aspect. And that's where your hazardous materials team come in. Water rescue, obviously, we have a fast-moving waterway in the city, through the city of South Bend with the St. Joe River. But along with that, we have the East Race Waterway, which we have enacted our Indiana River Rescue Training School, which trains not only local departments in fast-moving water, but we also train the fire department from FDNY, which is the fire department in New York City, Chicago Fire Department, and multiple other large cities send their individuals to train here in South Bend. So we take great pride in having the expertise of our firefighters involved with other municipalities and their instructors to be able to offer that service and give that high quality expertise to departments much larger than ours. You'll notice again, if I can reflect back on the number of runs, and you'll see the ambulance runs. I'd be remiss if I didn't say how proud I was of our men and women every day. It's not me that's out there making the calls anymore. It's our men and women that's out there, and they work tirelessly. Again, our work schedule is 24 hours a day, and sometimes even longer than that if they're working overtime. But these individuals are just short, in my opinion, just short of a whether it's a full-fledged doctor or even a medical director, because some of them have that high IQ. But this is what we are offering to our citizens. We are not just giving them basic EMS service. We are out there responding at the fastest times that you will find throughout the state. We are there. We are working with not only Beacon, but St. Joe Regional Medical Center, making sure that we are beating the standard for stroke intervention so that individuals that are succumbing to a stroke or cardiac arrest or a heart attack are getting that care expeditiously and as fast as possible, giving them a higher rate of being able to have a successful outcome. We take pride in that. So I say this on behalf of those individuals. Yes, I stand here before you, but it's the people that's behind me, the people that work for me, that actually do the work. And I can't say how proud I am of those individuals and their performance. And I believe you can ask anyone throughout the city of South Bend if they think the South Bend Fire Department's EMS and fire response is doing the job that they expect them to do, and I challenge them to say that they're not, because I know that they are. I'm going to fast forward to some of our focuses. As you notice on bullet point number 1, the streamlined application process. We are doing a much more efficient job on trying to get individuals through the online process more effectively to where they're not tied up trying to fill out 100 questionnaires when they really only need to fill out a few to create their interest so that our chief of training and our training bureau will be able to get back with them and get more information. We have found that a lot of times individuals through these application processes, they feel like they're tedious and they don't complete them, or they wasn't completing them. And so we streamlined that application process. We worked with IT, we worked with HR, and we've come up with a process that's making it more efficient and more easy for individuals to apply online. Bullet point number 2, recruiting events and strong presence at job fairs. Well, that hasn't stopped. It's more or less been a focus of mine since I came aboard as the fire chief. I believe in citizen interaction, not only when they have an emergency and it's the worst time of their lives. I believe that we need to be educating them on the sideline or any opportunity we can get, whether it's in the schools, whether it's at any type of event through the city that brings a lot of people, because no matter whether they're an adult, a teenager, or even an adolescent, I believe that they need to be educated on fire and life safety in order to help them if they ever have to have some type of medical emergency or get in any type of fire situation. Number 3, bullet point, lateral hiring process, quicker onboarding of qualified firefighters. The lateral hiring process is nothing new. All across this nation and this country, we've seen it. It's not just happening in the NC2A or some type of sporting program where people are transferring here and there. But we believe that South Bend is has a great department as far as any other department within the state or in the country. We pride ourselves on excellence. We don't give mediocre or moderate services to anyone that passes through our city or even resides in our city. We make sure that we are telling our individuals we want the best. And so therefore we put a lot of time into training. But if we can get individuals, because of our low numbers, if we can get individuals that come from other departments and are part of the PERF system, pension system already, and they already have some of their Fire 1, Fire 2, and some of the other criteria certifications, we welcome them to apply. It doesn't automatically mean that they're going to become a part of the South Bend Fire Department, but it gives them a leg up on the application and applying process. And they do get points for that, just like if they were in the military and they had some sort of military background where they incurred some type of fire science or fire training, they get points for that as well. So obviously, if they come into us with those, having already met those criteria, then we don't have to retrain them. Therefore, we're saving the citizens and taxpayers dollars and being able to use those a little bit more needed in other areas. But yet we're getting qualified individuals that we can put on the streets sooner. But we are not here trying to entice other, trying to minimize other departments' numbers. We are not that type of department, but we do want to make sure that we are offering an opportunity for those to want to be a part of the South Bend Fire Department. The internship program is a developing program. We'd like to really do a lot more with that. We just have to continue to get our numbers up to full strength so that we can really enact that. But part of that is also, if I could say, we have a career technology education program, and that's with the South Bend Community School Corporation. And basically, they send some of their students over to us, and in the past, we hadn't seen a great return on individuals once they got out of school to come back and want to be a part of our department. But just recently, in the last 2 recruit classes, we've seen that number increase, and so we are getting more of our high schoolers that after they finish high school interested in becoming South Bend firefighters, and that's what the intent was. Focus on retention, competitive wages and salary and pension base says it. If we're going to demand our people to be the best that they can be and to be ready at a moment's notice to respond to our citizens' needs, we understand, just like everywhere else, that we need to be competitive in our wages and our pension base. And hopefully that's what our goal moving forward is going to continue to be. Focus on community paramedic program. This program I'm very proud of. It's only operated by 2 paramedics, but they are out there tirelessly every day. I would want to increase that number because we have a lot of citizens with needs and a lot of individuals that don't know who to contact when they have a question. It's great that we have the 311 system in the city of South Bend to answer some of their questions, but these individuals are getting firsthand assistance by the 2 paramedics as far as helping them come up with a plan, whether it's to get their medications, whether it's to have a doctor to meet their specific needs, whether it's to help them with housing situations, help them with nourishment, and providing them just shelter. So this paramedic program is very intense and definitely rewarding, not only for the city of South Bend and the South Bend Fire Department, but also for the South Bend Police Department, because a lot of these individuals would call for our resources unnecessarily because they don't have a fire, they don't have necessarily a medical emergency, nor do they have a law enforcement needed assistance, but they just need somebody to come and help them because they can't get the doctor on the phone, they can't get the medication, they can't find an adequate place to stay because they're getting kicked out of their apartment, and they need some help. And so that's where this community paramedicine paramedic comes in. They come in, they help them with contacts, and also obviously it's a help for our medical facilities, because if you're not transporting these individuals, so there's savings all the way around with these individuals. If you're not transporting these people, then obviously, sure, we can say that's not revenue that we're generating for the city, but we can also say that we're not wasting our resources unnecessarily. So the community paramedicine paramedic program is one that's paying in huge dividends for not only the South Bend Fire Department, but for the community in general. The community risk reduction activities, we have numerous. Community risk reduction basically is similar or part of our Fire Prevention Bureau. And obviously, we all know that fire prevention is a huge topic. It wasn't that long ago that, the city had an incident that will take us back over 100 years that anything like it had ever happened. So what the community risk reduction is gonna be doing is getting in the schools, making sure we're getting out there, educating, talking about fire and life safety, but also giving our citizens and their parents, not only the parents and the kids, but anyone that move into our community, an opportunity to know how to get out safe, how to have a plan, and helping them to develop a plan of safety in case they were to have a fire in their residence. So this is our primary concern with risk reduction, as well as trying to come up with ways to do our job more efficiently and be more of a streamline to be able to help our firefighters have the information and access to the mechanical technology that will help them be able to get more resources when they need it. Because again, they work 24/7, and not everyone or every company is available at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we need to make sure our people are equipped with the necessary things that they're going to need to answer those questions and provide those services. The Indiana River Rescue School, as I mentioned earlier, one of the top in the nation, and that's right here in South Bend, Indiana. And we have not only our instructors, but also we collaborate with some of the instructors from other municipalities, Mishawaka, Clay, Elkhart, if they have instructors that are qualified to come and assist and teach that school. IAWRP conference, it's kind of pronounced IWARP. It's the International Association of Water Rescue Professionals. The City of South Bend has hosted this with the South Bend Fire Department for the last 2 years. I believe, where was the individual from this past year? The farthest individual came from? New Zealand. So not only are we bringing this type of international event, but obviously it's creating a lot of revenue for our downtown area, because we want to make sure that they get an opportunity to not only train and see some of the things that we have to offer, but also the hospitality, making sure that we are showing them the entire city of South Bend. And all reports are they love the city of South Bend, they love the waterways that we have to do their training, and they expect for us to host it more in the future. Fire Nuggets sponsorship in 2024, Fire Nuggets, Chief Rourke, our assistant training chief, has done a fabulous job in attracting, with our Luke J. Taylor training facility, attracting firefighters from all over the Midwest, if not further, to increase their abilities to be able to do some of the live fire trainings that they may not be able to do in their own districts or their own cities. And also, obviously, creating revenue, because those individuals have to pay in order to use our facility. And we've been doing this, and it's been a huge success, and we hope to do more of it, more like it, because the one thing is, it's great that we have a training facility, but it's even better when we can showcase it, as well as the knowledge and expertise of our instructors, to be able to showcase what we have here in the city of South Bend, and the South Bend Fire Department being one of the top fire departments in the state of Indiana. Now I'll bring Ken up, and he will talk over the financial aspects, but I am also available for any questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Ken Glowacki, Director of Finance for Public Safety, office at 1222 South Michigan Avenue. The slide in front of you talks about 2025 revenue for fire department. Unlike police and some of the other departments in the city, the fire department brings in a significant amount of revenue. The revenue on this page I describe as cash in the door revenue. This is not accounting transfers between funds to, balance out fund accounting. This is cash that's actually brought into the city, cash that reduces dependence on property taxes. I'll point out the biggest items in here. You go down to the third line, you see EMS revenue. Our 2025 budget is proposed at $4,044,000, and that's comprised of about $3.4 million in EMS billings. And I would clarify that, that is billings for runs that we make in the city of South Bend. We also provide service to, outside of South Bend to the other counties, other locations in St. Joe County outside of the city, those billings are not included in this number. And I'll talk about that in a second. We also receive, are budgeting to receive $469,000 from Medicaid. And then we also receive about $160,000 from special events. Those are, where you see a South Bend ambulance at a football game, graduation, Notre Dame football games, or high school football games. We bill for those events, and that comes to about $160,000 a year. Although I will have to admit that the largest amount of that is billings to Notre Dame. Okay. Moving down, I'm sorry, is there a question? No? Okay. Moving down the line is the money in the capital fund, and that money is what we bill St. Joe County to perform ambulance service for them. We use that revenue to fund our capital purchases. I'm going to talk about that in another slide a little later. And down at the bottom is the Indiana River Rescue School, budgeting $99,000 for the tuition we'll charge for that school. So the total revenue that I'm budgeting right now for 2025 is $6,456,000. The next slide, I've moved into the budget summary that you received from Finance and Admin, and you see that the total fire budget for 2025 is $43.6 million. I've highlighted a couple items that I want to talk about, and I'll get into some details in other slides. But again, you see that salary, wages, and benefits is our single biggest expense item. Supply items are also expensive. In the green, I've highlighted our debt service, which is a cost of capital. Along with down at the bottom in the brown, you'll see that we're planning on spending $1.8 million in capital this year. The other item that I wanted to highlight is repairs and maintenance. I'm budgeting $1,152,000. I worked at the police department for almost 6 years before I came over to fire. And I was kind of struck after coming here, the huge operating difference. And that is the fire department, unlike police, has a huge capital requirement with 11 fire stations, fire vehicles. It's a significant capital investment, and that's dramatically different from what happens at PD. And I have to say that's not good or bad, because one of the things I wanted to point out, I love working both at fire and police, but it's kind of a little bit, if I use a football analogy, it's a little bit like being employed by University of Notre Dame football team and Ohio State. So you just have to be careful which camp you're in at what point in time, but I do love all of that.
All the police are gone.
And finally, the last item on this page I want to point out is the fire pension. And similar to police, this is the old plan. None of the current firefighters are on this plan. And this plan is also reimbursed in total by the state. Okay?
It's the one in yellow.
The next slide, I'm looking at our budget for 2025, but I've split the budget into the funds that support our expenses. The largest is the general fund at $28,219,000. Although, again, like police is going down from the prior year, largely due to the increase in the second line item, the LOIT. We're expecting increased revenues from the LOIT, which will offset our salaries that we need to pay out of the general fund. The third line, capital, is a decrease, and that's really a timing issue between, like I said, our capital is a huge expense. An aerial truck now is costing $1.4 million. A basic engine we're now getting quotes at $975,000. So depending on what year you buy one fire truck versus another year where you might be buying an aerial has dramatic impact on the capital in that year. And we're going to talk about a schedule because we've tried to take a systematic plan as to how we replace that fleet and be cognizant of the funding that we have in the capital fund to pay for those. Okay. On this next slide, I wanted to talk about in a little bit more detail about the various components of our budget. And we'll see that the top three lines, our total salaries, are estimated to be $17,887 for next year, which is an increase of $345,000. That's due to the fact that right now, we have not started our contract negotiations with the fire union. And what's existing in the budget for our firefighter increase is the percentage increase they had in the last year of their contract, which is the 2024 year. And that was a 2% increase. But we are about to start negotiations with the fire union, and that will have an impact, obviously, on our budget. I do show that our wages and salary, again, are decreasing in the general fund because of that LOIT impact increase in revenue. The chief mentioned that what's also in here is we have 7 non-bargaining staff. 4 of those individuals are their job is primarily to bill those EMS runs, generating that $4 million plus revenue that we have there. See, wanted to talk a little bit about overtime. I'm anticipating that will increase next year, $250,000. We are short-staffed this year. Full staff would be, as Chief mentioned earlier, 256 firefighters. We are down in the 240 level right now, and that's driving up our overtime significantly. I'm estimating that our overtime for 2024 will be closer to $3 million than our budget of $2.4 million. And before we get too excited about the impact in 2024 budget, that increase in overtime will be offset by the savings that for firefighters that we don't have. So budget-wise, it will work out. That's a financial answer. From an operating standpoint, being down at the level of firefighters we're at is not good for operations. pro pays, these are the special pays that firefighters receive, and the police department has the same thing. But these are pro pays for being a paramedic, being an advanced paramedic, being a lead paramedic, and longevity. Those haven't changed because we haven't changed anything in the contract yet. Then moving on, I'll talk a little bit more in detail about supplies and services, but largely unchanged, and those numbers really pale in comparison to our salary and benefit numbers. This next slide, I wanted to talk about our capital and our capital schedule. A couple of years ago, one of my colleagues, director of finance for one of the other departments, was complaining about the fact that, their budget would be much easier if the fire department was not driving around with all these new vehicles. And I use this chart to explain that, and I love watching the fire vehicles. They're all shiny, and there's a little kid in me that loves to see them going down the street with the sirens going. But the reality is, although those fire engines and ambulances look clean and shiny and bright, they are in frontline service. And you see the number here, frontline for engines, 16 to 19 years. An ambulance is in frontline service for 15 years. An aerial is in service for 20 years. And what this little graph shows is on the top line, we have 11 engines in frontline service that are different at all our fire stations. We have 7 ambulances and 4 aerials. And what I'm doing here is our plan is to buy 2 engines every year, and then we buy them again, 2 engines again 3 years later, and we repeat that pattern. Now what that does, if you look down at the total, you go to year 16 before you buy a total of 12 engines. That means before you can go back and replace that first engine you bought in year 1, it's now 16 years old. And the other thing that impacts that is right now, the production time on an engine that you place in order for today is 36 months. So even though we will come to you and ask for an appropriation to make a commitment to buy that engine, we're not going to get it for 36 months. So you can see the aging that's occurring in the fleet. The point is, we believe this is an adequate schedule to cover our needs, but, and I know from a financial standpoint, when you're trying to balance the budget, it becomes very easy to look at, well, couldn't you put that $975,000 engine, can't you defer that a year? And the problem with that is, and in fact, years past, we have done that. And that's what's allowed the fleet to age. And this is a schedule that hopefully gets us back to having frontline vehicles that are, of reasonable use and service. I did the same thing with ambulances and aerials, and again, it shows you that, if you have 4 aerials and you buy one every 5 years, it's year 16 before you go back and replace that first aerial. So the point here is there is a plan in place. We think this works, but this is a schedule we think we need to adhere to make sure we have functional vehicles in service. If I go to the next slide, this is actually the details of the plan we submitted for 2025, and you'll see there are some additional items on here outside of the bigger items I've talked about. The first item that I want to point out is station design. That is the cost of employing an architect and doing the work that we need to do because we are in talks to replace Station 7, which was built in the 50s and no longer complies with standards that are set for living conditions for firefighters in terms of, safety, carbon monoxide, et cetera. We have, the next two lines are building improvements. The next line is $150,000 for building improvements. There's always a certain amount of, parking lots that need to be repaved, other things that are going on in our buildings. Again, there's 11 of them that need repair. The third line is the fuel project, and I don't know, based on the sequence of who's been presenting, but the city is undertaking a project to rebuild the fuel pumps because they're not up to EPA standards and they need to be replaced. And each department is getting allocated a share of that cost. The police department was $400,000. Fire is $112,000 to replace those pumps and get them up to standards. I'd like to move down. You'll see that in the yellow I've highlighted, we have $675,000 in the budget to buy a fire truck. And as I just said, we just received a quote on a truck that we're planning for 2024, and those, we don't have all the quotes yet, but one of the first ones received is at $975. Because the other thing that's happening with this 3-year production lead time, the manufacturers are not going to eat those cost increases. So when they're estimating the costs now, they're putting 3 years of cost increase into that estimate. And, unfortunately, it's not like buying Fords or Chevys. It's, you don't want to sign up, there's a line behind you, so there it is, folks. The other items I would point out, and I hadn't mentioned it on my earlier schedule, along with buying a new ambulance, I can't off the top of my head remember these. We buy a new ambulance every other year, 7. In the odd years, we do a refit, rebuild on one of the older ones to extend the life to the 14-year usage that we plan. The last item on the list is cardiac monitors, $200,000. There's a certain amount of equipment that we use that has a certification end-of-life date. And that's what we're facing with the cardiac monitors that are used in our ambulances. You'll see if you go out into the out years, the next line item down is firefighter turnout gear. Each firefighter gets 2 sets of turnout gear. There's the big heavy overcoats and pants that they wear. Those we replace every 10 years. So we do a purchase every 5 years to replace 1 set. So, and if you look at the bottom line, you can see that 2025, we're looking at $1.8 million. It drops down to $795,000 in 2026, just because of the timing of planned purchases. But then I would point out, you go out to 2028, it goes up to $4 million because of, we would be looking at trying to get possibly 2 to 3 engines that year. That's, a plan. Don't know how that will shake out. The other thing that I would point out is this money is not using general fund money. It is using the money that, again, we receive from St. Joe, and it's put into this fund, so it's separate from the capital. There's no financial accounting reason that it has to be this way. We could do these purchases right out of the general fund, but as a old financial guy. Most businesses like nice, smooth line items year after year. When you have fluctuations in purchases like this, it's kind of nice to say, well, we're not gonna take that out of the general fund, we're gonna put it over here as a capital fund. So that way, if our general fund goes up or down one year, we're not gonna say, well, that's the year we had to buy an aerial. It's off captioned and it's sort of known as a special purchase. The next slide. Excuse me. Great. Oop, sorry, there we go. On this slide, what I want to show you is, I want to summarize. The top line is, again, the monies that we're receiving from St. Joe to provide them EMS service. The second line is the amount of capital we're planning to spend this year. The third line says, well, the net of those two, how much are you adding to or subtracting out of your fund every year? And if you look at the cumulative line at the bottom, we continue to add every year to the fund until the 2028, when we'd be looking at those big purchases, and we would actually expend more than we receive in that year. But if you look at the cumulative dollars amount, we still have enough money to cover those out years. Again, that's what the purpose of the capital fund is to help balance those purchases from year to year and have money there and not have to go to the general fund and say, oh, this year I need $4 million, next year I need $800,000. But this slide shows that the money we receive from St. Joe County is adequate to fund our capital needs over the next 5 years. The only exception I would explain to that is the cost of a new station could not be covered by this fund. And in the past, it's been a bond that's normally covered that, but I just want to point that out. We'll go back a little bit to some of our smaller cost items, and sometimes hard to think of $1.4 million as small, but in the context of $43 million budget, I wanted to highlight some of our supply items. And you see operating supplies, $465,000, not changing dramatically from 2024. And if we're all outside of gas, if I look at operating supplies and medical supplies, there's nothing magical that I do from an accounting standpoint here, because the number of items that fall into these categories, you know, medical supplies from drugs to bandages to test kits, et cetera, there's not a lot of single major items. So what I tend to do to budget is really look at what our experience has been for the prior year. Unless there's some known event, unusual item that's going to happen, that's the best knowledge I have. And so there's, you know, nothing extremely difficult or large in these items. I will point out gas, that is based on, like police, that's based on a report I get from Central Services of how many gallons we use and what the cost will be. The gas costs for fire are way less than police, and although you think of the heavy vehicles and diesel fuel and less efficient, the difference is they're not circulating the city 24/7. They're in a station, make a run, go back to the station. They just don't run up the miles like police. Repair and maintenance, the next slide. Again, with 11 stations and our fleet of vehicles, our biggest cost items are repair, maintenance, and repair and maintenance of radio equipment. And that includes, you know, oil changes to new tires, to new transmissions. We currently just received a bill for $123,000 to repair The new fire truck that was in an accident at the beginning of the year was hit by an uninsured motorist, at a cost of $123,000. So it doesn't take too many of those to start running up your costs. Building maintenance, again, across 11 stations, there are air conditioners that go out, heaters that need to be repaired, plumbing issues, et cetera. Again, my numbers are normally based on looking at the prior years unless I know of some unusually large item. So that's it for my presentation on the financials. And
Okay, well, thank you so much for that presentation. Appreciate that. I am going to come to, this group. I'll start over here. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a couple.
Angela?
I'm wondering, something that we didn't really talk about in this is the fire inspectors that handle like building permit applications and stuff like that. And with the huge increase in construction, both in the city and in the county, how is the department preparing for that? Will we be offering more of our services to cover some of these county expansions? Or what are we looking at for that?
What we're looking at is trying to hopefully get to the point where we get to full staff and offer the training necessary to bring some of our firefighters on board to assist in the inspection and investigation bureau. We recognize that years ago, for the investigation bureau in general, we had 3 fire investigators as well as 2 police investigators assisting them. Because of the police needing more of their people on the street all throughout the years, they put those 2 individuals back into their force. And so we're operating now with only 3 investigators. And the inspectors, what we've been trying to do is do a cross-train between the inspectors and investigators to try to utilize both the investigators to do inspections and investigate, and the inspectors to do inspections and assist with investigations as well. But we recognize with the increase in both of those needs, the optimum is to increase those positions. But at this time, we need more people responding to the calls and work our way towards the goal of increasing the personnel in those particular divisions.
I guess I'll say to council as we start going into these negotiation stuff, I don't know if you guys even realize how much the inspections, investigations kind of really help and bring to our attention. So when I was on the zoning staff, it was often the fire department that we would rely on when we had a building maintenance issue or we had a building that we thought was completely unsafe. We relied on the fire department to help bring us to that thing. So thank you for all your help while I was.
You're welcome. And if I could, I'd just like to add as well, for the inspectors, the 3 that we have on board, when we look at a lot of the new businesses that would like to be inspected, as well as the previous and the already established businesses, a lot of times these 3 individuals have to make multi visits to these particular businesses in order to get them to meet the expectations that's necessary for them to have a license. I wish I could say they go there one time and one time. I think everybody here understands how that works. And we're hoping to try to get something in place with the city will actually assist them in being able to do it a little bit more efficiently, to where these businesses understand you're either going to comply or you're not going to get your license. Because we can't afford for those 3 individuals to make 6 and 7 trips to just one business. That's just not acceptable to be asking them. Thank you for bringing that up.
Anybody else have any questions? Councilwoman White?
Yes. How many inspections do you think the fire department do on a yearly basis, and some of them are environmental ones too as well.
Chief Burkhardt?
On a yearly basis, I would say, just licensing and permitting, working with with Michelle Adams downtown, we're doing, almost 1,000, I would say. And that's just in the first few months of the year, so all licensing and permitting is January through, the hope is to be done by April, and like the chief said, some of those extend further by the time we have to make multiple visits, but that's just the licensing and permitting, not to mention all the other buildings that we do too. Construction site visits, plan reviews, so new buildings that are going up, final inspection, so there's a lot to it. Like I said, another inspector would be great, but we're trying to work out some things to put some things in place to streamline it and to, get better compliance.
Because the window is very short to do those inspections, and then also working with the various departments within the city as well. So that's a lot, I didn't think it was 1,000, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
just
but
licensing.
Huh? Oh, it's a lot.
That's just licensing,
That doesn't deal with
that's not the
other
interview,
types of
all the other
properties
stuff for
that, you know, you have some difficulties with as
properties.
well.
There's a
Okay.
lot to do, so.
Okay,
The
good.
city ordinance states every 2 years, we should be going to every building, and
Wow.
that's very difficult to maintain right now.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm surprised, Chief, that no one has made mention of the new fire station and when that's gonna open. I go by there every day.
We're very proud of that. That in itself is one of the main drives that I had once I came to become the fire chief, was making sure that we make our facilities, acceptable, adaptable for both our men and our women. We can't continue to exist in 1950, 1960 buildings that still have horse troughs or that was only built for male firefighters. This is 2024, and we want to continue to keep going to the 21st century. And we must recognize that everyone is important, and no one is to be made devalued. And we honor and respect our women on the fire department, and we want them to feel comfortable as well as safe in all of our buildings.
Right.
And I believe the answer is not less buildings. In order to do that, it's making sure our existing buildings, because our citizens, that's what they deserve, that's the service they expect, and that's what we want to give them.
Okay, can I quote you on that? I'm teasing. I'm just teasing you. I'm teasing you on that, but excellent. I can't wait to see it. I mean, it's
We're
beautiful.
hoping, we had a meeting with them today. Everything is going great. It's coming along. My main thing, every time I go to a meeting over there or even go and just take a look at the site, is to talk to neighbors and make sure that they're still okay with it, and what's their opinion of how the project's coming along? Have they had any interruptions in getting to their homes? And how do they feel about how it looks? Does it represent them? Because that's what it's all for. Sure, the inside components is to make sure our people are safe and able to cohabitate within it. But outside is for the taxpayers, it's for our residents. It's not made just to be a shiny new building. And the residents are excited, but they're excited too of what it's going to entail for us in the future to be able to provide the services we're going to be able to provide for them.
Thank you.
So hopefully soon.
Okay, great.
Be listening.
Well, I drive by, I'll see you.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Tomas.
Thanks, Chief. Just piggybacking on that, by the end of the year, we should.
Well, honestly, that particular building, not by maybe the end of next month. So it's very exciting times in that regard. So we're hoping to have a press release and open house and to invite not only that neighborhood, but also everyone from the city of South Bend to come and take a look at what we can achieve together for the greater of everyone concerned. So
My question is related to the capital schedule and the vehicles here. Similarly, in police, do then decommission the vehicles or the frontline engines or ambulances?
well, honestly, we have some vehicles that's still in service past the 20-year mark.
Okay.
But we try to take good care of those. As someone, as I believe Ken had mentioned, how shiny they look and they look like they're practically still brand new. That's because we take great pride in taking care of them to the best of our abilities. We don't just intentionally let them decay or just become an eyesore. That really reflects bad on all of us. So we also need to have an adequate reserve. Because if one is in the shop for whatever purpose and for a suspended amount of time, we still need to be able to respond to our citizens' calls. So we can't just make an excuse and say, well, we can't send that vehicle because it's in the garage. We have to have reserves available. And so we don't automatically just decommission them. They would have to be obviously at a point to where they just can't be utilized anymore, and it's costing us too much money to keep in service. But other than that, we still need to have an adequate reserve for when 3 o'clock in the morning when the water pump breaks and they can't fix it in a short amount of time because we have to call in for a mechanic off duty. We still have to be available when those tones go off and make calls. So at 3 o'clock, they're switching out into one of these 20-year reserve vehicles that is still able to run, and they're getting it back ready to roll as a frontline vehicle until that frontline vehicle can be repaired. So we still need those vehicles of age to still be maintained, to be available when needed.
Thank you.
Well,
Any other questions, Councilmember Lee?
Thank you for your presentation, Chief. We really appreciate it. I can honestly say that the response time for our fire department, with our fire that we had in January, had they not responded quickly, it could have been a total building loss. So thank you all for your response time. In my district, it's starting to expand and grow, and I've had business owners ask me about expansion of another fire station in that area. Have you guys considered that or thought about that, or?
We've had several conversations about additional fire stations, but our main concern is getting the personnel to be in those stations to make those calls. So we can't put the cart before the horse, no matter how much we know there's a need for others, for new stations, primarily in your district. We have had conversations. I do keep that in mind, but right now, what's more important for me is maintaining our workforce and getting that up to the maximum status that we need to operate safely on our incidents. And but yes, we would definitely like to make sure, again, response time, if I could just talk just a second on that. Response time is just not us patting ourselves on the back saying how fast we arrived and riding through the intersections going, 30 miles or 40 miles an hour and heavy traffic and we do a lot of emergency vehicle operation training, of course, to be able to maneuver through that. But it's also about getting to the incident, to the resident, whoever called, whatever the emergency they have. Because if it was me and my family member or someone that was close to me was having a heart attack, or somebody that called me because their kitchen or their furnace is on fire, I want to make sure I get there as fast as I possibly can, because this is what we do. This is what we signed up for. We didn't sign up to just ease down the road and get there whenever we feel like it. No, we take pride in knowing that we are actively trying to get there as fast and safe as we possibly can so that we can minimize the situation and mitigate the incident.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm going to, I would like to say, Chief, thank you for the tour, and I really enjoyed it. But I would like to know, which I think I forgot to ask you, do you have an upcoming training class to alleviate some of what's going on now?
We're at 240, as was stipulated throughout the presentation. Our max, right now is 256. So we are actively, in the process of hopefully getting the school going, in October. But again, recognizing that school is gonna be 21 to 23 weeks long, and in January, we already have a projected, departure, through, retirement, thank you. But also to that, through retirement of probably 11 people before March. And that's not even indicating, that number isn't even close to the individuals that we know may decide to laterally transfer somewhere else, that we've been informed. So we're never gonna necessarily catch up overnight, but we at least need to maintain that objective of trying to get there. And because that'll take obviously the strain off the individuals that are working more than their hours that they should be working for their mental health and wellness, as well as their physical well-being.
Thank you.
Mr. Deal?
Chief, once you replace Station 7, where will that put you in terms of facilities?
Station 7 is one of my primary concerns right now. Obviously, completing Station 8 there on Twickenham and Altgeld is the primary concern. I want to make sure we see that through and make sure that that's appropriate. But Station 7 is the next oldest station, and obviously it's landlocked where it's located now. You can't go this way, you can't go that way, and you can't go back. The property line is so small that we have to look at moving that station. Obviously, the optimum, and I go around all the neighborhoods talking to the citizens, talking to them about, but we have to be careful where we can even think about moving stations. Obviously, that's going to affect the response time, so we have to take that into consideration. But more so, we have to make sure that we are providing adequate services to everyone within that district line. Right now, optimum would be near the old jewelry site right there in Measle Grove area. We wouldn't need that much parcel. We can make access off of Wilbur and off of Elwood, so therefore we don't have to worry about our trucks backing in off the street like they do on Portage. Thankfully, we don't have to, hopefully we don't get in a situation, I knock on something right now, because as was mentioned about the $123,000 due to the uninsured motorist who ran into a brand-new fire truck, costing us and costing the city and the taxpayers those unnecessary dollars. The same thing can be said for Portage. Portage, you have to back in off the street in order to get into that firehouse. There is no other way. So we need to take that element out. Again, we have to look at this in terms of 2025 throughout 2030. What is going to be, how can we effectively save money and decrease the ability of us getting into any unnecessary situation that's costing the taxpayers more dollars, but put us in a better place to not only make better, have a better response time to those calls, be more effective to the residents, but also be more safer as we do it. And so that's the area that I like to see us.
So once that is accomplished, will that do it for the foreseeable future in terms of facilities?
No, the next oldest station is station number 3, right there in McKinley, right there on McKinley, right across from McKinley, the former McKinley Elementary School. I'm not sure what's the designation of it now, but that's also landlocked. You can't go nowhere with it, and also needs to be brought up to standards of being adequately efficient and proficient for our males and females. Right now, it's on the border. And so that would be the next juncture. Now, that being said, School Corporation, who owns that parcel across the street where McKinley School is, they have a large area that's underutilized. I don't know if that's available or not, but I'm just saying that would be a great choice. I know the residents in that area, they want that station to stay close They like where it is, they appreciate where it is, they show that appreciation all the time. They have our personnel have a great rapport with the residents in that area, so I wouldn't look to move it too far. But, we want to do what's best for our citizens. That's the main thing. Yes.
Okay, we are past time for our, is there anyone online?
Yes, we have Sue Ketchum online.
Okay. We're gonna go to the public hearing portion. Sue, are you there?
I am.
Okay, could you, state your questions, please?
Actually, I had three things I'd like added that are of minimal cost, and then one question. I'd love to see the fire department train the citizens, on Stop the Bleed in the community to schools, companies, organizations. They could combine it with CPR. That's one thing I'd like to see added because we have so many gunshots and bleeding incidents in the community. I'd also like to see them add an annual ICE awareness, which is in case of emergency training, to have the public update their phones. I know that when someone shows up in a response, it's really important to have that information in the phone for a medic. And then the third thing I'd like to see done, and I've asked for this before, is have 9/11 call analysis so we can know better where to streamline things, the types and locations of 911, so better meet the needs of people and things like that. But my question was, how many SUV medic response people do we have? Is it just one or two? And if maybe increasing those would help alleviate the expensive medical runs and also be faster?
Chief, would you like to answer that now or respond to that in writing with the rest of the question?
I can respond to that more so in writing, Sue. I appreciate you bringing that up, and I know we've had several conversations about several of those items that you mentioned. As far as I can give a short version to that question, which would be, we have a lead medic, which is the captain of the medics that the county provides, and we have two lead paramedics that are in what we consider chase vehicles who can arrive on the scene to assess the area, assess the scene, and determine how many more as far as personnel we're going to need for that particular incident. But the upside is, yes, we have the lead paramedics out there in chase vehicles that are arriving on the scene faster to be able to assess. The downside is they still would need, if it determines that it is a transport, we're going to need an ambulance unit on that scene also with our paramedics to be able to transport where our chase vehicles and our SUVs can't transport. But I'd be more than willing to answer that question offline for you if you just contact me.
Okay, and our clerk's office will be tracking those questions tonight, and we're compiling them together for each presentation as we move through the budget. So thank you for your questions, Ms. Kissam. Is there anybody here that has any additional input? Any of the council members, any additional input? Chief, thank you so much for this very informative presentation.
Thank you all. I appreciate you.
Good job. Thank you for your service to our community. And at this time, this meeting is adjourned.
Chief, don't give up on CTE. I know one of the individuals who's sticking around to go